Daniel Murphy not worrying about the travel arrangements for tomorrow. As of now, the Cubs have their bags packed at Wrigley to fly straight to D.C., hopefully get a game in, fly straight back to play this weekend against Cincinnati. Joining us now, Mark Vasko, freelance sports broadcaster. Previously, you've been pretty much everywhere. The Score, BBM, Sporting News Radio, 15 years of play-by-play as well. So good to have you here.
I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, at Mark Vasko 101 on Twitter. Give him a follow there. This whole situation with the 30 days without a scheduled off day, and then now the weather looks like it's going to be okay for the Cubs to go to D.C. Theo Epstein on the radio earlier today was saying he would trust MLB would never send them into a situation that A, would be dangerous, and B, would be going back to a city that just had all those weather concerns. So it looks like they're going to have to play this game tomorrow.
And hope that the hurricane cooperates, because I mean, who knows if it will. If they get delays or extra innings or who knows what happens, then there's travel. And they say they haven't had a day off. I'm hoping they find their offense somewhere on that plane ride, because you just never know with that offense. But thank goodness Hendricks has been better lately, and need a good one from him tonight.
And that was where I was going to go next, is that tonight the starting pitching in this series, though, has been good. And so tonight it's on Kyle Hendricks to be able to keep up what the starting pitching has done, starting to become the focus and the strength of this team.
Well, and last night was outstanding. That was what you got him for, and so he gave up a lot, but guess what? He comes through in big games against Milwaukee, and they need to get this done against this team right here and right now. So that's why it's a big win for Hendricks. And just one thing about last night, everybody talks about that great play by Russell, and it was amazing. But since I'm an old first baseman, what about Rizzo? If he doesn't make that unbelievable stretch, he's still safe at first. So that was a great play on both ends. But that's what's been helping the pitching. Their defense has been phenomenal.
Yeah, there's a reason Rizzo is a platinum glove winner. Not just a gold glove, exactly. But the goldest of gloves, you could say, over at first base. But yeah, JP, the starting rotation, I mean, look, it's vacillated between preseason juggernaut and then kind of middle of the season, people were like, this is the weakness of the team, and now it's getting back to the strength. The addition of Cole Hamels obviously has solidified things with Yu Darvish going down. Darvish, by the way, had off-season surgery, I guess for him, off-season today. Debridement in his elbow, so he should be back by spring training next year. We knew he was gone for this year. But with Hamels and with the way Quintana and Hendricks and Lester, hopefully that back injury isn't serious, but you got to feel good about those four, especially when you're getting close to playoff time and you're setting that rotation.
Well, that's wch Hamels was huge, because you got to have the four going into the postseason, and you weren't sure that fourth was going to be with Darvish being iffy. So, how they did these things and get Hamel, it's just phenomenal, and he's been just remarkable. And if he can continue to be that, when the season started, you had so many guys who could be the ace.
Yeah.
In the middle of the season, you weren't sure. All of a sudden, there weren't any, and now you're back thinking, well, okay. Lester had that weird start to the second half, so you're like, we're in big trouble. Well, now I'm feeling much better about that rotation.
Well, it's really around after getting Cole Hamels, it was like it was at perfect timing for this starting rotation, and then now they're becoming the strength. But you said it right off the bat, though, Mark. It's offense, man. You just don't know what you're going to get on a night-to-night basis. Rizzo's going through a slump right now. Tonight it's one of those nights where you hope him, Daniel Murphy, and Rizzo can kind of get back into the groove of things.
Rizzo, obviously he's going to come through. Bryant has got to be Bryant. If this team's going to go deep in the postseason, your MVP has got to start being an MVP. I know he was hurt and all those things. And amazingly, his sub, you never knew what you were going to get from Bodie. That's phenomenal bonus. But now it's time, okay, now you've got Bodie to fill in elsewhere. Bryant's got to be Bryant.
Yeah, and Bodie's tailed off a little bit recently. Excuse me. We were at the game last night, I was telling you, JP, and with Chris Bryant, you know he's having a down year, but then when you see it on the Jumbotron, the numbers, and you're like, man, 11 home runs? How does he only have 11 home runs this year? But that's the thing with the shoulder injury. His power has been depleted, and I think when you look at hopefully what's going to be a long, maybe future Hall of Fame career for Chris Bryant, this year could be that weird statistical anomaly where you're like, oh, that was an odd year, and only playing whatever 110, 120 games that he gets out of this. But he's got to be MVP-esque Chris Bryant.
Thank you.
And I think that's where you're going to go, man.
That's where I was going, because I'm all about thinking about down the future, Hall of Fame career. But I want to know, can he turn it on once this postseason comes around? I mean, to me, that's what it comes down to. And it's got to be tough, because we sat here before the season started thinking that this is just going to be a huge year for him. I just couldn't imagine being at this point of the year, thinking that he would have those numbers that you were looking at the Jumbotron at.
And if you're going to have a down year from your catcher, which you didn't really expect, hey, you got a bonus in right field. You weren't thinking you were going to get anything. out of right field.
Yeah.
But now left field, well, Schwarber sort of comes and goes, and yeah, you look at his RBI total and you think, boy, it should be higher at this point in the season than it is right now. So anytime he wants to turn it on, he can feel free too.
Yeah, Schwarber's still out of the lineup, dealing with that back tightness. He will not make the trip to D.C., as well as all these starters and a couple of relievers, according to Joe Madden there. But yeah, last 30 games, guys, Cubs 20th in baseball in runs scored, 21st in average and weighted on base, 18th in home runs. They're a bottom half defense, bottom third really offense, I should say, over the last 30 days or so, so they got to pick that up definitely, and especially because the Brewers, they're going to hit. That's always the thing with the Brewers. That's the team they have built with the additions, and so I always feel better when you match those two teams up from a pitching perspective, but you have an off day from one of your starters, all of a sudden you're trying to get more runs in the Brewers. It's tough to catch up when you're playing those 6, 7, 8, 9 runs against one another game. I like where it's 3-2, 2-1 games against Milwaukee.
Well, but we've done really well pitching-wise against the Brewers.
Yeah.
We just really, I mean, right now you've got Braun not even going to play tonight, and he's only hitting about 200 against the Cubs this year anyway. So we've really been able to shut them down. So for all the troubles we've been talking about with the Cubs, they're still in first place, and they still have, for a majority of the half, have had the best record in the league. So if they can actually finally put it all together, of course, time's wasted, but you still feel like it's going to come.
Brandon Morrow said today that he threw 35 pitches and plans to throw a sim game in a few days, but that is the big question. He said today that he's going to be back playing baseball before the season's over. This team needs him to be back to what he was when he was here earlier on in the season.
Well, because that's the other key for the deep run of the postseason is the back end of the bullpen. Because if Morrow was going to be out, you're thinking, well, then you've got to have Edwards for the 8th, and Strope has got to come through in the 9th, and Strope's been pretty good.
Yeah.
But Edwards, for all the stuff he's had, he's been missing a little too often. I don't know if it's nibbling, it's just, hey, your ball moves, just throw it down the middle. It's not going to end up there, So, but now if Morrow comes back, now you've got those 3 guys, maybe for those last 2 innings, and hopefully enough of the combination works.
Yeah, and if you look at, we mentioned Cole Hamels as the addition at the break, at the trade deadline. The other addition a lot of people thought was going to be big was Brandon Kinsler. It's been the other guys that they've had in the bullpen. Jesse Chavez has been, you can argue the numbers, the best reliever in the National League since the Cubs got him. And then Jorge De La Rosa came in last night, a really solid 8th inning, 1, 2, 3. Those guys have solidified this bullpen without your closer. Strope has been really solid in the back end. So it sounded to me, hearing Morrow talk, hearing Madden talk, that if Brandon comes back, he's not going to be used in a closing situation, probably not even a high leverage right away until he feels like himself, and it might not be enough time for that to happen.
I think it's smart, though, to be able to maintain that, though, don't you think?
Yeah.
All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, we got more sports talk. Don't go anywhere. We switching it up or no?
Talk some Bears with Mark.
Let's talk some Bears with Mark next here on Sports Feed.
Now back to Sports Feed on CLTV.
Back on Sports Feed, Jared Payton, Josh Friedman hanging out with Mark Vasko at MarkVasko01 on Twitter, talking some Cubs in the first block. Let's switch it up, talk some Bears football, and I couldn't help but think what was going through Phil Simms' mind after his statement Sunday morning that this Bears team has no weakness, only to see that those weaknesses actually reared their ugly heads in the second half, blowing the 20-point victory. It's going to happen with a young team, first-year head coach, still a inexperienced quarterback. But, Mark, I want to know, how does this loss and the way it happened, how did the Bears make sure to learn from it and not let it fester the rest of this year?
Well, remember when they were going to run coming off the bus? Remember all these things, be the running team that they were? Well, on 3rd and 1, when your best player on offense right now is your running back, that's what you need to do, is give it to your best player. Trubisky may be your best player someday, but he isn't yet. So in that situation, in the clutch situation in 3rd and 1, give it to your best player. And that's Jordan Howard. And if he wasn't going to get it on 3rd, he would have gotten it on 4th. And they should have gone for it on 4th instead of kick the field goal anyway, because you know who you're playing against. Yeah. So you needed more points and you needed to run more clock. So hopefully the fact that your quarterback's a rookie and, for all intents and purposes, and your coach is a rookie, they're not necessarily going to play great games from start to finish yet this early. So neither one of them did, by the way, on Sunday. Maybe they will eventually here, hopefully this season. I was encouraged by some things that hurt, but it was inevitable. You knew it was going to happen.
It did. At some point, you knew it was going to happen. But, Mark, I want to stay with Jordan Howard because that was the biggest question a lot of people were thinking about coming into this season, how he was going to fit into this offense. And Josh mentioned it over and over again, how he was, after practice and training camp, working on catching balls. This guy he can do everything. He might not be the fastest guy. You can see it on these plays where he'll make something out of nothing, but he is right now your best player. And it's funny to watch him now, not only just running the football, but also catching it out of the backfield. Right now, he is the best guy and your best option, and knowing that you can rely on him 24/7. But Josh and I talked about this again. It's all about this offense and how it's really nice and it's really cute. Sometimes Matt Nagy gets too cute. And he needs to just go back to old school fashion football and running the football.
Well, when they came out with that T formation for the first play, well, you know what? They might want to use that a lot more.
Serious.
They've got 2 really good running backs and a quarterback that can run. So put them all out on the wing and have the 2 blocking in front. And I think it's a legitimate thing that they should be doing much more often.
Yeah, not just an ode to the fight song and to the days of George Halas, but it could actually be something that we'll see maybe more.
I'm going to make this a thing on Twitter.
Yeah,
I really am. Before
JP
Monday
for
night.
T formation.
Yeah, for T formation.
I like it. So how all-encompassing Nagy's debut, the good, the bad. How would you put a grade on it?
Well, I'm encouraged. Well, first of all, I like the team. Let's face it, the last 2 years, I didn't even like this team, and it's been my team my entire life. I didn't like the coach. I never liked the quarterback, Cutler. I mean, even last year, okay, but it wasn't really Trubisky's team yet. So I like this team. I like this coach. He answers questions. Nothing is a state secret like everything used to be. He seems like, the players like him. I'm willing to give him, some chances here. And I like the quarterback. I like that we went out and got skill players. The best defensive player in the league falls in your lap, which is phenomenal. So you weren't going to be a favorite from day one. And even with everything else that happened on Sunday night, if it's not Rodgers as quarterback, they win that game against anybody else, I think, frankly, in the National Football League.
Maybe not Tom Brady.
Well, maybe not Tom Brady, but there's, again, just about everybody else in our division, certainly.
Yeah.
They'd have won that game regardless of their mistakes. I also would throw Kyle Fuller passes till his hands bleed.
I'm with you on that one, Mark.
I mean, he's a professional safety, and he's got to catch the football.
I want to ask you this question. I want to ask you the question you said, that you really like this quarterback, and I think a lot of people, and Mitchell Trubisky has taken a big hit this week.
A lot of people are already saying he's a bust.
Yeah,
and it's one game into his second season.
It is so early. Mark, I just want to know what you like about him as a quarterback.
He tightened up in the second half, but his coach tightened up in the second half. I think that was also part of it.
Yeah.
I think if the coach would have showed more confidence in him with the play calls, I actually think he would have been better in the second half. It's just my opinion.
I agree with you.
But he still hasn't shown, a spectacular play or whatever. But it's been so long in this town since we've even seen a competent quarterback, frankly, because even Cutler underwhelmed for what he was supposed to be, that with all of his tools, I'm willing to grow with him. And I think he's a student of the game. He works hard. He's a good guy. The players already like him. He's a good leader. I think all of those things will eventually pan out. This year, I don't think was going to be a big playoff year anyway. If we can even sniff that, I think we're ahead of the game.
Before we let you go, we focused a lot on the offensive side and the blame going to a mix of things, whether it's the play calling or the inefficiency at the end of the game for Trubisky and not running the ball, yada, yada. How much blame, though, goes on the defensive side? They blew the 20-point lead just as much as you would say the offense didn't put the pedal, to the metal. And Vic Fangio's scheme, letting a one-legged Rodgers, a limited Rodgers, really pick you apart.
You talk about play calling on offense all the time. What about play calling on defense? They should have been blitzing him till the cows came home. He can't move, and they made adjustments in the halftime that the Bears didn't make. He went from whatever it was, 3.5 seconds till he got rid of the ball in the first half to like 2 seconds in the second half. So the rush couldn't get to him. Well, then you've got to blitz him and at least make his decisions tougher. And they didn't do it. The one thing, you can go down the list of all of our coaches, from Wani, those guys who played not to lose rather than to win. I just want a team that plays to win. If you would have gone for it on 4th and 1 and didn't get it and lost,
I'm with you.
I'm still fine with that. You were trying to win the game rather than not lose it. So take chances, blitz, whatever. You're still a young team. Take your chances now. Throw the ball downfield in the second half, which they didn't do. Blitz more in the second half, which they didn't do. I would rather go down fighting. I just would.
With you there.
Basically, we had almost the same views, same viewpoints. Mark, appreciate you for joining us, man.
I'm glad to be here.